I'm Sophie. I am a marketing and CRO UX executive at Teapot. I have made my presentation hopefully accessible to pretty much everyone, so apologies to any marketers in the room. I will be not dumbing it down, but just making it easily understood. There's also a very ungodly amount of GIFs, so I apologise, but you know, given that we're about to enter the social dark ages, it might be my last chance to use them. So yeah, first off, what is a landing page? The aim of my talk is actually to leave you with some things that you might want to think about with your own websites. If you're starting out or you're thinking about starting a website, then these are just some things that you might want to take into consideration. So a website landing page is basically any page that somebody enters your website on. So it could be your home page, it could be a service page, product page, a blog page. But ultimately, it's the very first impression that someone's going to have of your brand. And you only get one chance to make a good first impression. So you've got to make it count. In conjunction with this, you need to know about UX. So it's not UI. The two get very commonly mistaken as the same thing, but actually UX is all about the user experience and UI is about the interface. So for user experience, it's all about how the user feels, but more specifically, it's about how the user feels interacting with your website. And this is actually my criteria for when I'm doing a UX audit on a website. I've actually named it users feelings criteria because that feels a bit more apt. I look at positive influences. I look at negative influences. The positive influences are things like traction. They are elements on your page that will make people want to move forward in their user journeys. Your clarity, which is where you might have some really key information. How clear is it to that person visiting your website, of where they need to go next and what your company is all about? Reassurance. Everyone likes to be reassured. So, that's all about trust signals, things that you can include on your website that will make people feel like, yes, okay, this is a good company. I trust them. I want to learn more. Then you've got the negative things. So I don't really see them as negatives because you can switch them around, you can improve them. But anxiety, yes, you're not leaving them on a nervous wreck. But sometimes you enter a website and you feel a little bit uneasy, you're not too sure. So anything that makes the user feel like, okay, I'm not entirely convinced by this, that's considered an anxiety part of the UX. You've got friction as well, which is an element that will actually stop someone moving forward. So if you think about buttons, if they don't work, it's really annoying. And then you've got distractions, which is where you're actually giving too much to people. And you can actually overwhelm them into inaction. They might not actually do anything. So you've got to be quite mindful of these things. So let's get the bad stuff out the way first. Clutter. You've got to be really careful that your website copy doesn't ramble and it's very concise. If you ramble, and I get why people do this because they think, oh, SEO, I'm going to put a load of content on the page and it's going to rank really well. But actually, if someone lands on your page, they're bored. They don't want to read it. So you've got to strike a really fine balance. And you want to make sure that you're not asking them to do too many different things like call me, learn this, do that, do this. You just confuse people. So KISS is a really good acronym. Keep it simple, stupid. And then just make sure that you've got things like space in between your text and your images, but also down the sides of your page as well. A lot of people forget about that. And they often, you're trying to look across and you've got about 1 millimeter. Functional. So you need to make sure that your buttons actually work. Test your forms regularly. I know it sounds really silly. Things like also with links as well, like your email links and your telephone links. Make sure that you can actually click them and they actually go somewhere. And you can use tracking tools like Hotjar. And I love Hotjar because it's a little bit like a stalker's paradise. Phrased that wrong. But if you want to know what your actual users are doing, Hotjar is a really cool tool. It's completely free on a basic plan as well. And you just get the popcorn out and sit there, see what they're doing, see where they're moving to, where they're clicking, where they're scrolling. It's a bit scary, really, isn't it, when you think about it? So when you try and explain it, it is quite scary how much you can actually see. You can use other tools as well, like Page Speed Insight. So you can actually see whether your website pages are quite slow. Tools like that will actually tell you a more techie sort of problem, like JavaScript error or something like that, you know, that you can then send to your agency and say, I think this is a problem. Can you look into it for me? And they can validate it or just sense check it for you. So how do you make your website a really positive experience? Be consistent across all of your pages and assets. If you've got, I've seen some things where you've got a website and you've got it in certain colors, you've got an email that's in completely different ones. So you don't have that. That's a message that you're putting out. It's another touch point to your users. So you want to make sure that your messaging is very clear and you adhere to like brand guidelines. But similar pages largely should follow the same template. So if you've got one product page, it should look like another product page on that website as well, because otherwise the user might get a little bit confused. And your call to actions. So if you're a service-based company, you've probably got a main call to action like contact us. And if you are e-commerce, it's more likely going to be your basket and checking out. But make sure that those types of buttons are always one color. And then your secondary call to actions like find out more, see here, things like that, you know, that they're a different color, because psychologically you're trying to guide your users into performing the action that you want them to do. Just check your tone as well. You can be playful in certain aspects, obviously if you've got your brand guidelines and it allows you to, but just beware that you need to be talking to your audience as your brand, so it needs to be consistent across all of your channels. And then just check your messaging and just make sure that it actually makes sense and it's really clear to your users. And then be obvious. So your short, concise headlines, they're really snappy, they grab people's attention, say what they do on the tin. Make sure that any rules of text are broken down with images, nice visuals to make it more digestible. And make sure that your buttons are really clear, that they look like buttons and that they are directional arrows as well. That can be something. If you've got something that you want someone to click down to open it and it goes down, you don't want an arrow that's showing it to be up when it's truncated. It's just tiny little things like that can make a big difference. And be nurturing. Make sure that any key information that person needs is going to be seen really quickly. And accommodate for all users as well, because some of your users might need a little bit more time before actually making a conversion. So you'll have those that are quite brief and bold and snappy, and they'll make a snap impulse decision. But you will have some of those that want to deliberate a little bit more. So for those kinds of people, you can put little buttons into seeing more about the company and reading more about them, which will then hopefully give them some more trust signals and then lead to a conversion. Trustpilot. So it doesn't have to be Trustpilot. It could be just testimonials from the clients that you've got, preferably with their logo sometimes if they're really famous, because people understand who they are and buy into you. If EasyJet bought into someone, you are likely probably to trust them, hopefully. And any accreditations as well, this gets missed. Any certificates that you might have, anything that shows how authoritative you are in your subject, it's another trust signal. So it's worth including if you can. And then be one step ahead. So the pages that the user goes to next need to continue that flow towards the goal. So just check it. Use your analytics like software like GA4 to review user journeys and see where your users are dropping off. I'm sure Kate would agree with this. You can only make good decisions with good data. And if you'd like any help and not quite sure where to start, then these are my contact details. We are also running a series called Elevate in our newsletters. So it's free knowledge, basically. And you can get access to that by signing up with the QR code there. But it's anything from building your website from scratch all the way through to how to improve it if you're fully fledged but not quite sure what your next steps are. Thank you.